Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Advancing Man Project podcast. I am Dave Whitley, the Iron Tamer. I am your host, and today I am excited to have a longtime friend or acquaintance that I haven't actually spoken to in several years, but we kind of keep up with each other on social media, and I will occasionally comment on her stuff. We first met, her name is Mary Laske Bell. She and her husband used to live near me in the Nashville area, and that's how we met. She and myself and my wife, and was your husband involved in East Can as well?
He was a little bit, but he also was traveling a lot at that time,
Yeah.
so it was more my thing.
Well, there was an animal rescue organization called East Can. Is it Community Action Network? Is that what CAN stands for? Based out of East
Yep,
Nashville.
that's right.
And my wife and I used to foster puppies and kittens from there when we still lived up around that area. And so Mary and I ran across each other back then, and I found out as just through the years watching and communicating and connecting on social media that she's an entrepreneur. She's an email marketing and copywriting. She's also um, into breath work and energetic work. She owns a company called The Busy Bell, which is a boutique email marketing and copywriting agency for six-figure, seven-figure, and eight-figure personal brands, coaches. She's the founder of the Breath Chamber, and she offers online and in-person breathwork and healing experiences for entrepreneurs. That really caught my attention because um, those are two areas of things that I've been deeply involved for many, many years. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize you were a breath worker. So that's cool. I'm looking forward to talking about that. She a few years ago moved to Ohio from Nashville and lives there now with her husband. She's got a couple kids, daughters that are age 2.5 and 5, and a German Shepherd named Otis, which is a fantastic name for a German Shepherd. Um, and I'm gonna quote something that she sent me when we were setting the show up. She says, "Sales and marketing background led me to copywriting, then to email marketing in particular. I've also been a Reiki master teacher, breathwork and meditation facilitator for 15 years. After landing in the ER for emergency gallbladder surgery, I realized how damaging hustle culture is for entrepreneurs and decided to merge my two seemingly different worlds into one by offering breath work as a business strategy in and of itself." That hooked me in. That's got my attention. Mary, thank you for being on the show. I'm really looking forward to this. This is going to be a fun time. Um,
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and I'm excited to just even catch up.
Absolutely. Right before I hit record, I in our pre-conversation, I asked you about your background in breath work, and you started to tell me, and I cut you off. I said, "No, wait, I want this to go live. I want everybody else to hear this at the same time." So let's start from there. Let's talk about breath work. What, how, and why for you?
Yeah. So, and I think you were asking me, like, is there a particular type of breath work that I teach or subscribe to? And um, like the very first breath work technique I ever experienced was breath of fire. And this was shortly after I became certified as a Reiki master teacher. And I was participating in a group meditation, and we were doing several different types of meditation. And one of them was breath of fire. And the woman, the facilitator, had some candles lit around the room. And there were maybe, I don't know, 10 or 15 of us participating in this. And we all started doing breath of fire, and a candle exploded. And then another one exploded. And like we were all kind of, shocked and spooked a little bit, but kept going. And then when it was over, we were like, that was the coolest thing ever. Like actually seeing, because you can't always see energy or the effects of this stuff, but to see that we had created so much energy in that room with our breath alone that we were popping candles. I thought this is just so cool. And I led different types of groups, right? We did everything from Reiki healing to Reiki drumming. I have a certification where my buffalo drum is attuned with my Reiki energy. So I used to do a lot of that down in Nashville. Um, and then there was another healing modality that came into my life through Oneness University in India. And there was a breathwork technique that we used to do in that called Ananda Mandala. And that was really powerful and like had really like accelerated my awakening experience and just my awareness and healing all around. Um, and I didn't really think of breathwork itself as a business until 15 years later, when one of my copywriting clients was a breathwork facilitator. And I was writing copy for her breathwork business. And I was like, people are paying for this, like as a business, like they're coming to you just for breathwork. I used to do this all the time, And so she actually became my mentor and I got certified in the technique that she teaches, which is called conscious circular breathing. And so I share all different kinds of techniques with the people who come to me. But when we do a longer journey, like that takes an hour to 90 minutes, sometimes 2 hours, it is that conscious circular breathing technique that we use. Um, and it's an open mouth technique, which is a little different for people. Um, and yeah, but a little bit of everything breathwork wise. But that's the one that got me like reinvigorated about breathwork again and
Right.
actually teaching it and sharing it.
Right. I like that you said the thing about it being open mouth and how that
Yeah.
uh, going into and talking to people who do breath work and qigong and pranayama and that sort of stuff. The open mouth versus closed mouth discussion can often turn into the fit into the category of religion and politics and nutrition. It's things. Let's just not
Yeah.
talk about those things because I think
Yeah.
that and truth be told, I came into breath work from a qigong background and it from a
Mhm.
martial approach, and it was always emphasized: keep the mouth closed, keep the teeth together, keep the tongue touching the roof of the mouth to complete the circuit of the microcosmic orbit. And I never really
Mhm.
questioned that until I started getting into the Wim Hof method. And I'd played with some yogic stuff before, like what is it, lion's breath, where you inhale through the nose and then you open
Oh
the
yeah.
mouth and make specific sounds and stuff um, with an open mouth. But I went and trained with Wim, and someone asked the question. He said something I thought was pretty brilliant. He said, "It doesn't matter what hole it goes in, as long as it goes in."
So good.
And there's differing schools of thought on that, and there's different philosophical approaches and stuff, but my experience has been very much like that open mouth versus closed mouth really comes down to what are you hoping to accomplish.
Mhm.
What's the path that you're on? Where do you want to wind up at the end of the session or at the end of multiple sessions? And I think that's a better question to ask than should I do it with my mouth open or my mouth closed? Because it really turns into you've seen the the meme picture of the people with the flags and they're on the battlefield battling over whether my duck is superior to your rabbit. No, my rabbit's superior to your duck. And it's the drawing that's if you look at it vertically, it's a rabbit. If you turn it on its side, it's a duck's head. And so
Oh, I
they're
haven't seen that meme, but that's
yeah.
perfect.
But you know the picture I'm talking about though, right? And like
Yeah.
I'm like
Hmm.
you're arguing, you're killing each other over the same thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, a conscious circular breathing. I am not familiar with that. Can you tell a little bit more about it without like having to go through a full session, like what it's like, what it entails, what the
Yeah. So circular meaning that it doesn't stop. There's no pause at the top, there's no pause at the bottom, and it's all open mouth unless there's modifications. I was going to say, I did conscious circular breathing when I was 9 months pregnant with my daughter, and I don't recommend open mouth when you're pregnant or if there's heart conditions or respiratory conditions. And so the technique can be done with sealed lips. And I still had a beautiful experience 9 months pregnant doing it with my mouth closed and not breathing at as quick of a pace as I do now when I'm not
Mhm.
pregnant. So it's interesting too. It's like, okay, I'm going to tell you how to do the technique, but there are modifications that are
Sure.
still going to get you there, right? Um, So all open mouth, 2 inhales, 1 exhale. So the first inhale is into the belly, really expanding and opening the belly.
Uh-huh.
You keep the belly expanded and you take the breath into the chest.
Okay.
So inhale into the belly, inhale into the chest, and then the exhale is just release, let go. There's no push, no force, no anything audible. I always tell people it's kind of like you're rising, rising, melting into the floor, rising, rising, melting into the floor. And when it's done in a full, I mean, you could do that for 5 minutes and it would be amazing. When we do it in a full journey, like in a workshop, we're doing it anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes to an hour, something like that. So it's pretty intense.
Yeah, that's thanks for explaining that. That's quite similar to the way that um the basic level Wim Hof breathing was done, the way that I was taught when I went and trained with him.
Right.
Um for the exhale or for the release, because to me
Mhm.
those are two different things. Um it, do you just you said you don't make any sound, there's no force, so you just let it go and let the air pressure inside the lung and the air pressure in the external environment equalize, so you're not.
So, um, it's so I'm thinking about the pace too,
Uh-huh.
and my microphone has a windscreen, so you can't hear me
Okay.
breathing. But if these are my inhales and this is my exhale, this is kind of what it looks like.
Okay.
So because the pace is somewhat quick, it's not like a and then an exhale that's like a balloon slowly deflating
Right.
like this over time, right? So there's a little bit of audible, like I can hear people exhaling in the room, but the point is it's not like a lion's breath
Right.
or a forceful, anything like that.
Or
Um, but I can hear people exhaling in the room.
yeah, that's the that's the question I had, is like, because if you do something like a Nali Kriya, you're familiar with Nali Kriya?
Mm-mm.
That's a internal organ, so you may know it by a different name. Like you would inhale fully and then you would exhale as much as you possibly can, everything out, force it out, force it out, force it out, and then close off your throat, and then
Mm.
bring your attention into your chest, and it creates a vacuum in your stomach. And then
Oh,
you
yeah, okay.
then you can roll the abdominal muscles, and you've got um this vacuum with the internal organs in it, and then the abdominal muscles moving in various different ways massage the internal organs. It's great for like constipation and digestion and stuff like that.
Mm.
um but you're saying just let the breath go, don't create a vacuum, um which is the fundamental Wim Hof thing. It's like inhale and let it go, don't force any more out after you hit that what we would call a neutral lung. Because like I can inhale
Right, right.
and release it, and there's nothing else coming out, but there's still air in there, and I can continue that exhale by forcing it, and that's creating negative
Right.
pressure in the lung, which now if I just relax, fills back up to neutral. So that's what you're describing.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And so I always tell people it's sort of like control on the inhale and release on the exhale. That's why I use the term release. I know like there is a specific release on the journey later
Right.
that's not so much the breath. Um, but and I which I think is perfect for people who are control freaks
Mm-hmm.
because you get to fulfill that control part of yourself that likes to be in control on the inhale. And then you're forced to let go on the exhale and not be so controlling. So I think it's this nice little balance of giving you what you want and then kind of making you release a little bit of that control.
Giving you
Yeah.
what you
So
want
it's,
and what you need.
yeah, exactly.
Cool. And so how do you take that and plug it into, how did you describe it? Breath work as a business strategy in and of itself. How do you take this and help entrepreneurs with it? You just mentioned if you're a control freak, and there are a lot of people who they want to be in complete control of everything and they don't want to delegate anything. Um, so
Yeah.
there's that, but talk more about that. I'm curious.
Yeah, so I there's a couple things that are coming to my mind. First is that like we're so used to hustling and driving and pushing. And if we need to make more revenue, it's like, what do I have to do? What action do I have to take? Um, how late do I have to stay up to get this sales page ready and publish it and launch it and market it and fill it up and da da da? It's always push and drive and fight. It's like this very masculine energy, which
Hmm.
has its place. That's fine. But I'm of the mind that we can't live there alone. Like we can't stay there. It's not sustainable. And so it is kind of just like that breath: control, effort, attention, action on the inhale, release on the exhale. And so I found that in terms of revenue, when I was constantly pushing in my business and like scrambling for the next sale and trying to close a deal, that's when my income would dip. And when I would sit back and be like, okay, I want to be open to receiving what is meant for me. And I started to tap into abundance mindset and attraction type marketing and just attraction energy in general, and speaking to the universe and saying, I'm open to receive these things that I want. Please, like I'm ready for you to provide. That's when my income would go back up. But I stayed in this up and down because as soon as it would go back up, I'd be like, all right, we did it. Now I gotta go. I gotta push. I gotta force. I gotta act. I gotta do. And it would be like, shoop, something would fall, something would slip away. And so it became this back and forth. And I felt like it was the universe trying to teach me the same lesson over and over again. And I wasn't getting it. And the way I tell the story is like the universe was like, okay, I thought money was important to you. Clearly, it's not your top priority because I keep showing you the way and you keep ignoring me and trying to push and fight your way to the top. So I'm going to mess with your health. I have a feeling that you prioritize that quite a bit, right? So pushing and fighting and hustle mentality and competition. And I ended up in the hospital out of the blue, had no idea, I mean, you know me, always been
Hmm.
into fitness, used to
Hmm.
be in the fitness industry, um, healthy living, healthy lifestyle. I care very much about my health, thought I was super healthy. And one of my organs completely failed on me. And I landed in the emergency room and even have pictures and was like posting on social media, um, pictures of me in my hospital bed after surgery, working on my clients' accounts in my hospital bed, in my hospital gown, being like, hey, does your email marketer do this? And it's like, man, it's just not the way. Um, and I had a big wake up call after that. I remember everybody saying, like, oh, yeah, I had my gallbladder removed. It was no big deal. You'll be fine. Da da da. Everybody was, oh, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. For me, my body was not recovering. I was not healing. I even had a mole on my body that my dermatologist wanted to scrape and check out. It was nothing, but the wound left behind from him removing it was not healing. Like
Mm.
my body was not healing. And so I had to take a huge step back and really start prioritizing my health and thinking about, I learned a whole lot about um, that the liver is really responsible for keeping all of the other organs healthy and functioning. So I've done a lot of liver health related things. I take a lot of supplements now for digestion to help my body without this organ that it used to have.
Hmm.
Um, and I got just way more tapped into my breath work practice and tapping way more into the receiving and allowing energy and even just processing rejection, right? Which entrepreneurs face all the time, processing failure, which entrepreneurs face all the time, um, processing shame, which, whether they want to admit it or not, entrepreneurs face all the time. Like all of these things that affect our business, we keep trying to seek external solutions to fix, or we just ignore them and we keep driving business, right? And I was witnessing it laid out in front of me. That approach does not work for me. And I imagine I'm not the only one, right? So I started sharing my story a little bit more and finding that a lot of people are fed up with hustle culture. It does not fit with a lot of people's lifestyle anymore. Um, or they're just finding that it doesn't work. They can hustle, hustle, hustle and have a little bit of success, but there's always that slide back down. And then they regret hustling so much because they weren't valuing their family or their anything else outside of their business during that period. So I just found that by sharing my own story and talking about how I was taking this more um, feminine approach, like feminine energy, there has to be balance between masculine and feminine for, profound benefits. Um, More people just started reaching out and being like, how are you doing this? I want to do it. I need more of that in my life. And that's when I put the online community together, um, and just witnessing the beautiful transformations among those people in there. I was like, yes, more people do need this. Entrepreneurs in particular. I mean, everybody, but I feel like because of my personal story and how this exploded for me, I was like, that's who needs it, right? They always say like you're helping the person who you used to be.
Mhm.
And I just see so many entrepreneurs in that hustle mentality. It doesn't work for them and they don't know what else to do. So I'm offering another solution,
That's
another approach.
fantastic. Thank you. I knew this was going to be a good conversation, and like what you just said is better than anything that I hoped would come from this. I truly appreciate that. I truly appreciate you
Awesome.
putting it into terms of masculine and feminine energy.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you completely. And we were talking before we hit record that the name of this show, the Advancing Man Project, comes from Wallace Wattles in the book The Science of Getting Rich, and he stresses over and over and over again in that book that if you approach your business from what he calls the competitive plane, which this is 115 years ago. If we look at now, we would call that whole hustle culture.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same attitude. Um, if you approach it from the competitive plane, your success will be short lived if it happens at all, because it will catch up to you. If you approach it from
Yeah.
what he calls the creative plane, which is where I hope more and more entrepreneurs and people, well, not just entrepreneurs themselves, like, and I'm having so many thoughts right now. This is why I
Yeah.
stuttered when I was a kid, is I would have so many thoughts trying to come out.
Oh.
Not just entrepreneurs, because you've got on one hand you've got the I'm out of bed at 2:30 hitting the gym and I've got more done by 6 than you're going to do all week. Hustle and grind. You're a loser because you don't do this kind of stuff. I'm like there's one guy that keeps popping in my Instagram feed who like his thing is, I outwork you. I'm going to out recover and out rest you too. I'm going to sleep better than you do. And I'm like, just shut up, dude.
Oh yeah. Let's turn rest and recovery into a
Into a
competition.
competition, right? And
Yeah.
consequently, he's also one of those guys that he'll have um, his summits where he comes in and teaches sales technique, and he will pull men out of the audience and bring them up on stage and have them take their shirts off and then body shame them and say, you suck because you don't have a six pack. And I'm like, no, no, and just
Mm.
no, because like
Yeah.
my initial thought when I saw him do that was like, I have bent steel nails sitting in ice baths, and I look at you and you're doing that, and I love the world, and I'm a happy dude, and I look at that and I see some of his workout motivation videos, and I'm like, you're in the gym doing one arm tricep press downs with 20 pounds. We're not the same. We're not the same. So that that is like the extreme masculine side of the hustle culture approach. And then the other side, I think, you mentioned earlier about um attraction and maybe the law of attraction and the universe and all. I think that that's the other side where people can go too far and they say, well, I'm just gonna declare my intention and the universe will deliver it to me and I won't have to do anything. No, have fun being poor, um, there's there and you nailed it. You said there has to be that balance between
Mhm.
the masculine and the feminine energy. And when I say that, I'm talking not in terms of like biology at all. I'm talking purely
Right.
energetic. And if we go back and we
Yeah.
look at, the Hermetic teachings and the Kybalion and all that, there's the law of gender. Everything contains an element of the masculine and the element of the feminine. And
Mhm.
like if we look at the yin and yang symbol, it's right there, right? You got black with a little
Mhm.
bit of white, and you got white with a little bit of black, and they cannot coexist without each other. Um, and so for me, it's not that one is superior to the other, it's what is actually superior, or not even superior is not the right word. It's like what is effective or what is optimal is how do we take
Yeah.
each one of those things, figure out for our own self and our own experience in this moment where I need to be and how I need to be either expressing something outward masculinely or being receptive in receiving of something from a feminine standpoint, from feminine energy, because we all have to do that. That's just,
Yeah.
it's the law. It's like gravity. I mean, ignorance of the law does not make you exempt from the consequences of the law. And I think too that if I had not become a dad when I did, I would have been that hustle culture guy. I would have been that up at 3 in the morning guy. Um, and
Yeah.
and I've seen too many quote unquote successful entrepreneur men bragging about how, oh, it was really hard and I missed all these softball games and I missed my kids' piano recital and whatever, but I'm successful. And I'm like, but are you though? Are
Mm.
you? Or are you just addicted to the pursuit of what you believe success is? Because I don't hear any peace in that. I missed one baseball game so far for the past year and a half that my son's been playing. And the reason that I missed it is because I was traveling and it was a game that got rained out and they rescheduled it on a day that I was already gone. That's the only game that
Oh
I
no.
missed. And I'll take that over any hustle culture um be a real man shit that anyone wants to throw out there, you know.
Yeah. Well,
Because
and
because 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 I can come in and back up the strong side of it too. Oh, you're
yeah.
strong, you're lifting weights, that's cute, kid. Come bend this
Yeah.
horseshoe.
Yeah. Well, and I think, because I know at least for me, I used to think and believe that I was hustling for my kids and for
Hmm.
my family. And then when this happened and I ended up in the hospital, I thought, man, if that action kills me, then that's the most suffering I could bring to my kids and my family? So now I say I'm hustling for my health and I'm hustling for my family and my kids. Business is a part of my life, but I do not need to hustle in business to make it work for, the outcomes that I desire.
Hmm.
And that was a huge shift for me. And this just happened in October of 23. So it's only been like, how
Six
long
months.
is that? 6, 7 months.
Yeah.
Um, that I had this huge wake up call. That I thought that I had and understood in the past. Um, but yeah, it did not really hit me until it was my health. And then I was like, wow, I think I'm pushing for my family, but if I continue to push and it suffers my health, that's the biggest suffering I could bring to them. That's
Right.
ridiculous. It makes no sense.
Right. You said something earlier too about using breath work as a means of processing things like failure and shame, and
Mm,
how as entrepreneurs we all endure that. You mentioned something about essentially just suppressing it, like, oh yeah, I failed, so what, let's move on, we're just not going to talk about that anymore, which is,
mhm.
suppression is the opposite of processing. And paraphrasing Bob Proctor, what doesn't get expressed gets suppressed, and then it will become expressed because you will be depressed.
Oh yeah.
Something to that effect, right? You can't continually inhale and never exhale, right? There has to be the flow
Yeah.
back and forth. So talk a little bit more about how you help people who maybe wired a little bit too yang to get more yin, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're not yang enough and you need to yang them up a little bit. That's I just created a phrase, yang them up.
I'm
Um
gonna yang you up.
yeah, you're gonna get yanged.
So,
Um,
yeah, I
particularly
actually wrote
around
down.
particularly around fear or failure, fear, and shame, because I have my own perceptions of what those things mean, and they don't necessarily mean the same thing to me that they meant a few years ago. But I'm curious to
Mm,
let's just talk about that.
yeah. So I have two thoughts. The second one will be more aligned to that. The first thought is, just in talking about masculine and feminine energy and balancing this with breath work. And if you feel like you're a person who is very much one side and a little bit the other, or very much the other side and a little bit the other, um, solar and lunar breathing are
Mm,
great to balance this out. So, like, if you are caught up in hustle and you enjoy the hustle and you enjoy pushing and action and drive and all of that, cool. Incorporate some lunar breathing into your life, because lunar breathing is the yin, it is the feminine, it is the receiving and allowing. And so I love that you can use the breath to balance the energy, even if your actions aren't there yet. And same with the other way. If you've got too much feminine energy and not enough masculine, you could use solar breathing to balance that out. And I find that if you can balance the energy, then the actions follow suit. And so people who are having trouble tapping into one side or the other, you can actually manipulate the breath to do that for you and at least get the energy balance, which will bring about, physical balance and external balance. So that's one thing. As far as guilt and shame and rejection and all of this, um, I end up doing a lot of channeling while I'm guiding breath work. And so we may even start with, and I have like cards here that I pull for my members. Um, we'll talk about like what's going on in our lives this week and what's happening in business and what's hard or what's fun or what's exciting or what's making us scared. So we'll talk about all of that. And then sometimes we pick a card to guide the technique, or we'll ask a specific question. And then whatever the card is, I end up channeling a little bit more in addition to what is just written on the card, based on what my members just shared is going on in their business right now. And then when we do a longer breathwork journey, because when we meet weekly, um, it's more like 5 to 10 minute bite-sized practices that you can use anytime, right? When we meet monthly, we go through a conscious circular breathing journey. And it's a little bit longer and it's a little more in depth, but channeling happens there too. So I'm able to just pick up on what people are dealing with that month or in that moment or this week. Um, and sometimes, like, so I can prompt them with different things to think about or to find in their body as they're breathing that help them find traumas or rejections or moments in life when their power was taken away from them, or moments in their life where they regret something that they did and that there's shame or guilt associated with that. Like, I can prompt them these little things without getting too specific, that allows them to free flow think while they're breathing and explore where that pain and trauma lies. Um, and I channel the message so much that sometimes afterwards people will be like, I loved it when you said blah, 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 because that's exactly what was in my head. And I'm like, I don't remember I said that. Like, or they'll say, what was it that you said about the guilt? And I'm like, I don't know what, what did I say? So I just get in the moment and allow it to come through. I often have an idea of what we're going to be examining on that journey, but I don't always know what the prompts are going to be.
Right.
Um, and so just having somebody tap into that energy and prompt them with the right open-ended question that allows them to explore within themselves. People tell me all the time, I had no idea I was holding on to all that, or I had no idea I was still holding on to that. Um, or I had no idea how much self-hatred I had from trauma I had in my childhood, like things that, and here's the difference. Some of it is suppression, right? People know what the trauma was and they suppress it, or they know what um the current side effects are from that trauma and they suppress it. But the other thing I think people run into is they think they've healed it because they've become aware of it and accepted it. But awareness and acceptance are like surface level healing. And with breath work, we go a layer deeper. It's not just being aware of that pain and accepting it as that was the truth. We go back and like sit with that version of ourself that happened to and heal that version of ourself. And people come out and they're like, I feel lighter than I have in years. So you asked about like specifically finding that guilt or shame or rejection or trauma. And that's sort of the long answer to say it's like these open-ended, channeled prompts that get them to dig and find it internally. It's one of the things I love about breath work, especially being a Reiki master healer. Breath work is healing yourself within. It's internal healing, as opposed to having to seek a healer externally to say, I need you to heal me. This is you and your breath. It's available to you 24/7. And it's one of the only modalities that I can think of that is in your control. And it is internal healing as opposed to seeking help from the external world, which is not how we heal anyway. So I think a lot of people have experienced a lot of external healing. Even talking to a therapist, which I think is beautiful and would never tell somebody not to do that. But even that is an external thing. And so I find that the breath is the only internal modality I have found where I actually get to heal myself.
So many thoughts coming to my mind right now.
I was going to
I
say it's kind of a long-winded answer
no
to
no
what you asked, but
uh, it's great. It's great. And um one of the things that happened for me, martial arts, qigong, meditation, all of that was sort of lumped into the same place. And then I got into the strength world and was recommended by my mentor to read this book called the the Mighty Atom: The Spiritual Journey of Joseph Greenstein. If you're not familiar with the Mighty Atom, and if you don't have that book, if you can find the book, it's out of print now. If you can find it for under $100, let me know. I want it. I've got 6 or 7 copies of it that that I own now. Some signed by the author, some signed by the Mighty Atom's sons and his protege, Slim the Hammerman. So like I'm giving you like my lineage backwards. There's myself and all of my contemporaries can be traced directly back to this guy, Dennis Rogers. Like no one would know what any of us are doing if Dennis Rogers didn't exist. He's that important, in my opinion. He learned from a guy named Slim the Hammerman. Slim the Hammerman learned from a guy named the Mighty Atom, right? Joseph Greenstein. Fascinating story. The guy was born in 1893 in the poorest family of a poor village in Poland. A month, 6 weeks, something like that, premature, and he was Jewish. So like literally every strike that you could have against you coming out of the womb, he had it. Doctors came to check him out when he was a newborn, and they're like, "Hey, when this baby dies, let us know. We will pay you for the body so that we can study it."
Gosh.
I mean, that's what his mother was faced with as an infant. He was told he would never live to see his 18th birthday, and as the story goes, when he was about 14 years old, he snuck into the circus and saw this guy who was a wrestler and strongman doing his thing, and was completely fascinated by it. Then he got jumped and beaten up, and this wrestler came and rescued him, and wound up taking him under his wing. And the very first thing that he taught him how to do was how to breathe.
Mm,
And
that's awesome.
the breath technique isn't very well described in the book, but I have personally met a couple of his children. There's only one surviving now, Jerry. He's probably in his 80s by now. And but the next older son, Mike, was a performing strongman. He was on America's Got Talent pulling a car with his teeth at age 93.
Oh my gosh.
And 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 I knew him, so that was super cool. He told me a little bit about the specific breath practices anyway. So the all that to say, yeah, you gave a long answer. I'm giving a long setup. There's a quote from that book that got me back into doing breath work and qigong when I started doing feats of strength seriously. Um, and it goes along with what I said about Dennis Rogers earlier, saying that learn to control the fear and the doubt because the mind controls the body. Um, the
Mm,
quote from there, paraphrasing this, is when you master your breathing, you master all your other bodily functions.
mm,
And that sounds like a cute little soundbite and an easy throwaway. But if you stop and just think about that, you can master all your bodily functions. That means dopamine and serotonin production. That means how well you're
mhm,
digesting your food. That means how well you can move your body. That means heart rate. And I'm sure you've experienced in your practice. I can sit and breathe and make my heart beat faster. I can sit and breathe and make my heart beat slower and not do anything else. Right.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think that because all of us have some sort of rudimentary skill at breathing, otherwise we wouldn't be alive, we take it for granted. Why would I need anybody to teach me how to breathe? I'm already breathing, is a question that I'm
Mhm.
sure you've heard before. But how well are you
Oh yeah.
breathing? Right. And so using breath work the way you described earlier to go on these internal journeys and to go back and look at what you may be consciously aware of but suppressing, or even more importantly, what you may be completely unconscious of because you've been suppressing it for decades. I just blocked it out of my
Yeah.
mind and kept going because that's survival, right? And like you said, going to therapist, that's great. But I believe that a lot of the stuff that can be done in a breathwork session or in a meditation session like that, um, what you said reminded me of the story of the baby bird and the eggshell, right? Which I don't know if you know this one or not, but feel free to use it because I don't know where I got it, but I didn't come up with it. When the mama bird lays the eggs in the nest, that shell, without it, the embryo that's developing inside it will die almost immediately, right? It is
Mm,
absolutely necessary. If that shell gets cracked, it's over with. Once the embryo is developed enough that it can break out from the inside, it no longer needs the shell. And birds know this and they go on about their business and they do bird things, right? But imagine if that bird had the thought processes and the reinforcement of identity that so many humans have, and that bird thought, that kept me safe. I'm taking it with me everywhere it goes or everywhere I go because it has to keep me safe. Now the bird is dragging eggshells along with it and doesn't escape the cat, and he gets eaten because
mm,
he's clinging to an old, outdated, not only is it not useful anymore, it's actually counterproductive survival mechanism that is preventing him from, at least from experiencing life fully. I can't fly because I got to drag this thing around. And ultimately it could wind up costing him, creating an early death like that. So I think that using techniques like what you're describing about going in and being okay with the fact that whatever this terrible thing has happened and I was there and I've been ignoring it because it's been too painful to deal with. But I'm going to clean the mold out of the basement now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Yeah.
that is some of the most important work that we can do. And I think that as entrepreneurs, uh, very few people get into being an entrepreneur and actually stick with it because of the money. I think
Mm-hmm.
certainly we can. There's a lot of money that can be involved in that, but ultimately, I think someone who's got that true entrepreneurial spirit does because they want to help people, and they want to solve problems for people. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, the bigger, more widespread the problem is, the more the compensation is for that. But what you're doing is helping the people who solve problems to solve their own problems. And
Yeah.
if I have less problems of my own that are affecting me day to day, how much more service am I able to provide to other people? So you're doing that pebble in the pond thing, which is just absolutely beautiful, and I truly appreciate that. So
Thank
glad we
you. Yeah.
decided
And
to have
this
this
is
call.
why, me too. This is why like coaches and leaders have been inviting me to like the masterminds that they're hosting to guide breathwork experiences for their attendees because they're realizing like how much impact it has on them and their business, and that like the people who are paying to attend their events will get a higher ROI if they can also have this um I don't want to say rapid, but like immediate expansion in their own healing and journey too, right? So like not only are I think more entrepreneurs seeing the value in it, but they're seeing the value in bringing it to their people too.
Yeah, definitely. Another question
Yeah.
about all this stuff, because I always weave parental stuff into this. How does all of this affect you as a mom and affect your kids and affect
Mm.
how you do parenting?
Oh my gosh, so much. And I think it's been the whole journey of the last 18 months, the last 6 to 7 months in particular, but like pulling back, slowing down, allowing, just tapping into more feminine energy than I used to have. I've always been very masculine energy. Um, Used to take a lot of pride in that. Um, but tapping into more feminine energy and this allowing and receiving energy has made me more nurturing for my kids and like setting boundaries around that family time where, it used to be, um, if I think about like the weekends, and if I had projects due or clients to take care of, I'd be telling my kids, like, hold on a second. I got to finish this. Hold on, like in this frustrated experience for them. And I look back on that now and I'm like, ugh, I'm so sorry I did that, and like made them feel like they weren't valued, or that my time was better spent over here, or that my work was more valuable, because God, that's not the case. That's not the case. And our kids need to see that they are our priority. Um, they need to experience that. It can't just be in words, and it can't be, I'm doing this for you, right? Because they don't understand that. They understand you're choosing work over me, or you're telling me you can get to me after the work is done. Like they just experience you prioritizing work.
Hmm.
And in this like transformation I've had, I show them you are my priority. I don't even work in front of them. Like, and granted, they go to daycare, so I have help, right? But my mornings are for them and getting them ready and doing their hair and getting their milk ready and all this. My after school pickup and dinner, and we light a candle now for like we have this little ceremony around
Mm.
dinner, which I heard was a trick to get them to actually stay in their seats, and it is working. So if you're not familiar with that, creating this ceremony around like a dinner candle.
Mm-hmm.
It's like something instinctual about fire and being mealtime.
Yeah.
Kids like tune into it. So, um, like clients are not bothering me during dinner with my kids or bedtime. I'm reading them stories, and even if I'm doing the same things, like I always read them stories, but I'd be in between the books, checking my phone, who needs me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But tapping into this feminine energy and receiving and allowing and being has just caused me to be more present and more aware of how they're experiencing my actions. Um, and it's made me more nurturing and fierce about those boundaries.
Right.
Like, you can't, everything will be fine. My business is not going to fall apart if I take mornings and nights and weekends to be with my family. It
Right.
hasn't happened. So I'm convinced it won't.
Well, and I
um,
think to that point, um, again, another idea concept that I'm going to say that I'm confident that I didn't come up with. I'm not sure where I got this, but the idea there is that for the first 7 years or so, we know that children exist largely in a theta brainwave state. They're just absorbing whatever goes in, right? Um, and I got a pretty good handle of, on that before my son was even born. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to model for him what I value, and like that's people that know me or have listened to this before have heard this story more times. So you can go get a drink right now. I'll be done in 40 seconds. Like when we found out we had a very difficult time getting him here. And then when we found out for sure that Mandy was pregnant and that we were going to have a son, or not a son, that we are going to have a child because we didn't know yet. I said, okay, what is important for me to instill and to, value wise and character wise. And so I sat down and wrote out a list of stuff. And then I read back over the list and I'm like, I'm not this guy. I say these things are important, but I'm not this guy in a lot of these areas. And so I set about, reinventing myself according to that. And then somewhere along the way, I heard, and again, I'm paraphrasing this, I don't know where it came from, but during that period of time, especially, however we present ourselves and interact with them, that becomes their definition of love.
mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wait a minute. And so I just took that idea and just meditated on it for a while. I'm like, that makes so much sense. Because if we think about, the stereotypical 4 or 5 year old boy falls down, skins his knees, crying. Oh, go rub some dirt on it. Quit crying like a little girl. You're going to be okay. Boys don't cry. I'm like, that just permeates culture, right? And then if we look at that versus, 3 decades later, 4 decades later, that same guy, that same kid is full grown. He's got kids. He's working all the time because he thinks that provide is how I do love. And he's not making the connection with his kids. And he's depressed and he's got anxiety and potentially substance abuse. And, if you look at the state of men's mental health, I believe you can trace it back to that cultural thing. The other side of the coin, little girl comes over to the grown-ups on the playground. She's 4 or 5 years old. She's crying. What's wrong? The little boy over there pushed me down or threw a frog in my face or whatever. Oh, honey, that just means that he likes you.
Mm-hmm.
We've all heard that one, right? Let's fast
Oh
forward.
yeah.
Let's fast forward 3 decades with her, and she's in the same relationship with yet another asshole. It's the same relationship. They're just changing out who the partner is. He's unkind to her. He's abusive on some level. She's not getting what she needs out of it. And it occurred to me, no one ever stopped to think about, okay, if that's what a boy does when he likes a girl, what will he do to a girl that he doesn't like? And so she's
Mm.
internalized, if someone's mean to me, that means they love me. And the little boy's internalized that if I cry, then I'm not a man. And there are so many ways to just stop that stuff, to break that stuff. And it all has to start with, like you said earlier, we go inside and we heal from within. And I think that the breath is the catalyst for that, right? There are so many things that
Oh
I've
yeah.
personally experienced and things like you've described that if you aren't able to alter your physiology to get into the brainwave state that you need to be, you'll never get there. And the breath it's just inviting us to do that. So breath work, energy work, all that stuff. I love that you were bringing that to the audience that you're bringing it to. And I love the energy that you're bringing it to, because I think that you are in a unique position that you are coming from being the hustle driven woman. And I believe that women
Mm-hmm.
who hustle and drive, they're existing in a masculine world, and they're having to out masculine certain, certain masculine traits in that. And that's what the culture is, right? The whole thing about you have to work twice as hard for half the pay, and and all of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. There's a lot of validity to that. um I think it can also be very much an excuse for some people to never go into it, or for men to be angry at women because they have unresolved mommy issues or whatever. So I'm not saying it's as simple as all that, but I'm saying that I find that admirable in you. I admire that in you, that you ascended to that spot, and then when you got there, you're like, this is breaking me down and destroying me. There's a better way. I have to find the better
Yeah.
way, and you found it. And now on top of all that, you're taking your pain, your suffering, and everything that went along with that, um, to help other people not have to endure that. So it's a beautiful thing, and I appreciate you doing that. And I appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much. Yeah, it's really, I've felt the calling for 15 years and I ignored it because, all those things.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't possibly be the one, right? Like why me? All of that. And
Hmm.
then yeah, this ending up in the hospital was just a wake up call. And I was like, okay, it is me. And I'm going to tell my story and I'm going to share it. And I'm going to get other people on board to save their own damn lives. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
and families, and just to touch on that, I've had a lot of people come to breath work even just recently. And we always do a group share afterwards. And I've had a couple women tell me that they realized in that session, one session alone, that they needed to go back and mend relationships with their kids. And I think like, wow, that is so beautiful and transformational that in one session, a mom can go back and heal, go back and start the conversation with a kid who she wasn't there for when they were a baby. And
Right.
she's still carrying regret over it. And she's 70 years old, like it's not too late. It's not too late. So the things that are happening in these sessions, the fact that these things are coming up means that it's not too late to heal them. So I think that's important too. If you feel like, your trauma has been with you your whole life, and so what else could there be? It's not too late to heal it.
Well, and I think that the thing that we run into, and I love that you bring that point up. The thing that we run into with that is we function according to the identity that we've established. And if I'm the guy who I always outwork everybody, and I have to give that up, then who am I? Right? That's the real work.
Oh
It's like, who
yeah.
do I become then? Right? And it's just like,
Oh yeah.
if I'm the person who has a bad back, or that's always sick, and I get healthy, some part of my identity doesn't want me to get healthy, because I receive love by that
Mm.
definition, as from the concern of other people, because of my bad back or being sick or whatever. Right? And I think that
Yeah.
that goes into how the mind controls the body, and everything that goes along with that. Really, the true bravery in doing the kind of work that you're talking about is, am I willing to go in and look at my identity and say, that part of my identity does not serve me, but it's malleable, and the only way for me to become who I want to be is to become who I want to be, and that means I've got to let that part of me die. And
Hmm.
it I think a misconception is that when we start a healing process like that, is like, okay, I've come to this realization and this is what I'm going to do, and everything's going to be wonderful now. No, no, you've just stirred everything up. you
Yeah.
you woke up the beast, and the beast literally is fearing for its life, because you're going to starve it until it dies, because that's a part of you that it doesn't serve you or anybody else, and it's got to go. And the only way to do it is to starve it to death by not giving it your energy, your attention, and not saying, I am this person anymore. You have to say, I am this other person. And so man, I'm glad that we had this show. This didn't go at all the way I didn't have
Me
like any
too.
expectations on it, but I'm like, this is good. This is really good. It's a little
Yeah.
bit different than I expected it to be. So, if you're cool with it, we got a couple of minutes. I want to jump into
Yeah,
rapid fire questions. And I think I neglected to mention this on the front end. Your website is thebusybell, BELLE.com, correct? And
that's right.
that's where people can find out everything that there is to know about what they can about what you want to
So
know.
that is a lot of email marketing, and
Uh-huh.
there's a sign up link on that page for my breathwork email list. I also own breathchamber.com, which is geared specifically towards like if you want to have a breathwork experience at your event, but people can also check it out and just see what it's about.
Okay. I've made a note of that. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes when we publish this. All right, let's go into
Okay,
rapid
cool.
fire round. Rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm
What's
ready.
what is one useless talent that you have?
I can juggle.
Good. What is a personal mantra or belief that you want to pass on to your kids?
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, so I'm gonna say I am magical, and that's because that's something that I share with my daughter all the time, and she says it to me, and she'll come up with things. And I'm like, "How did you know that?" And she'll just look at me and she'll go, "Mommy, I'm magical." So igniting that, imagination and allowing her to tap into that intuition is beautiful, and I'm gonna keep doing that.
That is beautiful. I love it. My son says, I see it in my mind.
Ooh,
And
I
I
love
yeah,
that.
since we're in rapid fire, I'm not going to go into the full story about that, but I'll tell you about it some other time. What's the most valuable
Okay.
piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, these are tough. Ever received in my life? Oh my gosh. Um, I think it's just the one that's top of mind right now because I just got back from one of my clients' events, which is a mindset event.
Mhm.
And um, there was just a lot of talk there about how we communicate with ourselves and with other people is always communication with the universe. And so, like, I already know that the thoughts I have in my head are telling the universe what I thought, but I didn't think about it in terms of that goes for all communication. Everything I'm communicating to my team and my partner and my kids and my friends and like everything we're saying internally and externally is how you're communicating to the universe what you want and desire and you're open to receive. So that's been a big
Mm,
um that's been a fun thing to play with in the last couple of weeks.
yeah, yeah. That's the most valuable piece of advice. What's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
Hmm. I think I don't know, like any parenting advice from, because as a parent, like there's no level of preparedness that can ever truly prepare you. And a lot of it comes down to your own intuition. And I believe that, you know, we have a lot of ancestral knowledge on how to care for family and how to raise children that if we listen to too much external advice on how to raise kids, we neglect some of that internal ancestral knowledge that has always been right, right?
Very much, very much. Favorite
Plus,
holiday?
it's just really annoying.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Favorite holiday would be Halloween.
Very good. David Lee Roth or
Yeah.
Sammy Hagar?
Ooh, I'm gonna say Sammy Hagar.
Okay.
I wonder. Austin always plays these games with me, and
Yeah.
we have whole conversations on them.
Yeah. The funny aside on that, my wife was never and still isn't a Van Halen fan. For me, the answer is always Edward. Um, but she not being a Van Halen fan, when but my son is, and so for as long as he's been alive, there's been a lot of Van Halen going on in our house. She can kind of tell the difference now, but for a while there, she would ask me, "Is that I Can't Drive 55 or is that Boys City Bop?" to try to figure out who the singer was because she couldn't even remember their name. Um,
That's me with even though they don't really sound alike, but AC/DC and oh my gosh, uh, what's his name? The Black Sabbath guy,
Ozzy
Ozzy. Like I'll hear the music, and maybe it's just because it's similar
energy.
period.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Austin will be like, how can you get those two confused?
Maybe I should have Austin on the show. I think he and I could have some good conversations too.
Oh yeah, I bet you would for sure.
Um, and then the last one. What is a cherished family tradition that either you inherited and continue to implement, or one that you've created for your family that 20 generations down the line, when we're dead, gone, and no one remembers our names, you hope your family's still doing?
I love that. So even though Halloween is my favorite holiday and we like that's a big fun holiday for the whole family too, I think it's shopping for the Christmas tree, which is like the tradition. And I grew up with real Christmas trees in my home, and we are, like that's we do real Christmas trees in our house, and just the whole thing, the whole experience of going out and letting the kids help us pick which one is going to be the one. And we've also gotten them the place where we go to get our Christmas trees. They take like one little branch off of a tree and stick it in a block, and it becomes this like oh, what's the cartoon, babe?
The
I
Charlie
can't
Brown,
remember, but
the Charlie Brown Christmas
Charlie
tree.
Brown. It becomes like this little Charlie Brown Christmas tree. So we get them one of those, and it's like the hot chocolate, and they have a huge fire there. It's the whole thing just makes me feel in the spirit of winter, which in Ohio is rough. So I love that tradition. That's my favorite. And I
Excellent.
hope that they carry it on too.
Excellent. Well, Mary, I want to thank you again for being on here. Everybody that's listening, if you want to get in touch with Mary, if she's spoken to you in some way that it's causing you to vibrate on a particular frequency, you can find her at thebusybell.com. That's BELLE.com. That's for the professional copywriting, entrepreneurial side of things. And then the Breath Chamber, is it Breath Chamber or the Breath Chamber.com?
So right now it's breathchamber.com.
Okay.
I am not super tech savvy, and I do own the Breath Chamber, and I've tried to point it and it's not working. So breathchamber.com will get you there for sure.
Breathchamber.com will get you there. And that's for all things breath work related. Mary, I appreciate you being on. Everybody's listening. Thanks a bunch. This is Dave Whitley, Advancing Man Project, and we'll see you next time.